We're thrilled to invite renowned healer and founder of the Place of Bliss Academy and Sanctuary, Sufani Garza, to the Blend podcast. Sufani will be offering a free online gift, Unlock Your Hidden Power, the free Shadow Work Healing Masterclass, Uncover Your Roots of Your Blocks, Shadows, Depression, Fears, Struggles, and Inability to Move Forward. It's a 1 hour and 20-minute free course. It's available to all our viewers. Just like, comment, or share to pick up the free gift. Sufani is a practitioner in many healing therapies, such as alternative healing, Reiki, channeling, spiritual counseling, soul care therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, shamanism, guided image therapy, and many more esoteric practices in cultural studies. She has owned Place of Bliss Academy and Sanctuary for more than 20 years, teaching live classes, trainings, and certifications. And in 2020, she converted to the online platform called Udemy to reach a global audience. Since that time, she's published more than 50 courses, gained over 37,000 students with over 60,000 enrollments, is in 172 countries with 46 languages, and is a global online instructor and founder and director of Place of Bliss Academy. Her unique style of teaching is the shaman's way, teaching through storytelling and sharing. Her courses range from alternative healing, counseling, and psychology, writing, marketing, channeling, voodoo, witchcraft, meditation, self-love, emotional intelligence, communication, and more. She's also a published author. In her publishing career, she's been published both traditionally through Austin Macaulay Publisher and has self-published many titles as well. She was a columnist for the Reiki Times and has been published in the Sedona Journal of Emergence, wrote a healing column for 253 magazine and several other articles in magazines over the years on topics of healing and wellness. She is an avid horror reader and a published author in horror as well. She published a horror thriller called Purdy House, 1377 Rickaby Lane, Book 1, and Purdy House, The Cold Room, Book 2, and Book 3 is on the way. She blends healing and horror in her own prolific style in every single book. She publishes under the name Sufani Wiseman Garza. A link of all her books will be in the description of this video. She has 3 grown children, a husband of 20 years, and is the guardian of 2 adorable rescue cats named Riker and Minuet. Minuet you'll meet during the video interview and on the podcast. And Riker and Minuet, they were named after Star Trek Next Generation characters. I hope you enjoy the interview with Sufani Garza. There you have it. Sufani, it's great to have you. It's great to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. Are you exhausted with all that reading? I was like, man, I'm tired just listening to all of that. That was a lot of work.
Oh, we got through it. But it's quite the resume. And of course, we have Cara with us as well. And there's a deep connection between Cara and Sufani. And we'll be talking about that on the program here today. Sufani, for you, your diverse background, clearly, but tell me about this journey into the healing arts and how that all began for you.
The way that it ends up beginning, probably every healer that is in the industry would say the same thing. Our journeys are similar. Oh, here comes my kitty cats. Cara, are you used to seeing that?
Love it.
So let's just talk about this. So in my classes, this is Minuet, and Minuet is always she ends up doing this in all of my videos when I do my classes, and I will leave those cuts in because I think that part of, talking to people and educating people and doing it in a casual, friendly way where people don't even realize that they're learning is you leave a lot of those little things in where institutional learning, the old way of learning, everything kind of had to be very professional and, just so, and there wasn't a lot of leeway. And with my teaching, I kind of approached my teaching, my videos the way I would for a YouTube video. It's like, you're going to leave these little fun things in because it keeps people engaged, but back to your original question, we were so rudely interrupted by Minuet. Her tail, she's my mascot. Her tail is famous in my videos.
Yes, it is.
So with healing, this is how most people who come into healing enter it. They have something going on themselves, and they start to inquire how to fix what's going on, how to have a higher quality of life. And they're starting to do self-discovery and analysis on themselves so that they can have a better life. And it could be emotional, it could be physical, it could be any number of things that are going on in someone's life. And so it's the same for me. I was a single mom, and I was under a lot of, you could imagine, I mean, you guys have children, right? Yeah. And you know what it takes to raise them together. And it's a lot when you're balancing work and home life. And then, you know, when you're doing it and you've got 3 kids and you're on your own and they're all pretty young, I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. And so I ended up having a lot of headaches, like migraine headaches. And when I had the migraine headaches, it started to be such a problem that it was debilitating. And that was what started my journey. I thought, you know, there has to be a way to stop this. And I knew I was under so much stress and I was in survival mode all the time. So I didn't really know, what was out there. I hadn't really looked into that environment yet, you know, that industry yet, but that was the thing that got me to start looking. And here's the interesting thing. I remember that I was working. I haven't thought of this story forever, so I'm glad you asked it. Okay. So the really interesting way that I started Reiki, because Reiki was my introduction into alternative healing. I was having this problem with massive migraines, and I was under so much stress, and it was almost like you can't handle it, so much stress, you know. But I remember that for a while I was driving home from work every day, and you know, you're on autopilot and you just kind of drive. And you know how you can daydream or think of other things, and you don't even know how you got home or turned left or right or the stop. You just do it on autopilot. And what was happening with me was I started for probably a month and a half, you know, before what I'm going to tell you happened. I kept on the way home, I would have these almost like a vision. I was calling them daydreams then, but it was more accurately a vision. And I had this vision of a palm. Let me get in here. It was like a palm and a flame coming out of it. And I kept having this vision. And keep in mind, I had not been exposed to any of this type of stuff, you know, like alternative healing yet. So I had no idea. And I knew that I liked every time that I would, you know, once in a while would see like Inner Balance magazine or something like that with candles and essential oils. I was always drawn to that. I thought it was really neat, but I hadn't really delved into that. And so I kept driving home, and I was worried about my stress level and about everything in life. And for probably about 6 weeks or so on the way home, like clockwork, when I would drive home on autopilot, I would see this hand and this flame. And I had no idea what it meant, because just like a daydream, you know, the minute you get out, you put your car in park and you get out, it's gone, because you're on to the next things that you're focused on with the kids and your life. So I didn't give it much thought. So one day, about 6 weeks later or so, I get the mail, and I get this Inner Balance magazine. And I'm walking in, and I'm turning the pages because I was interested in the stuff that was in it. I thought it was neat. And I come upon a page, and don't you know, it has a hand with a flame coming out of it. And on the top, it said Reiki. And that was my introduction to okay, I felt like it was almost like this divine intervention, like, hey, pay attention, because I've been giving you this sign for 6 weeks, so that when you saw this, you would know to stop and pay attention to it, you know. And so I did, and it was Reiki, and that started my journey on, you know, everything that it was saying about, you know, healing mind, body, spirit, you know, and that was speaking my language, because I was struggling with migraines and stress, and they were brought on by stress. And so that kind of started my journey. And I knew right away, I'm like, okay, how do I find somebody? How do I, you know, and I just started looking, you know, for people in my area. And I did find a Reiki Master in my area. And she had a physical class. And so I signed up for Reiki 1 as soon as I could get into her next class. And the rest was kind of history, because it didn't stop, from that point on. That was in 2000, and so I was doing Reiki right away. And that really healed the problem that I was having, because it taught me how to balance these energies that we have in life, where life is never going to be perfect. It's always going to have a lot of anxiety and stress, because we're constantly evolving, and the world is evolving. It's not always for the better, right? Like, we're experiencing a lot of conflict and things going on in the world, and it's stressful even to kind of witness it. And especially if you're empathic, which I am, because that means you're like taking on a lot of energies around you, and you have to learn how to deal with that. And that's what Reiki taught me. And so you can imagine that for someone who all these years has been absorbing the energies of everybody around them, how that can really harm you, mentally and physically. It can really hurt you, taking all of that on. So Reiki was really that thing that helped me balance those energies, and to understand, like, okay, how do you stay in your own energy? How do you keep these energies from coming in? How do you empower yourself by choosing, like, the energies that are going to be around you? And it's more than just walking into a store, and, you can't choose all of that energy that's around you, but you can kind of put up this bubble and have an intention when you go in. But it's also choosing the right people to be in your life, right? Because people that are in your life that are not good for you, or maybe you have an insecurity, and they feel good with you having that insecurity, because they have insecurities and they feel better when they're around you with insecurities, right? So in Reiki, I was told by my teacher, and it's very true, that, you don't have to leave people, they'll leave you.
Yeah.
Because, right? Because the people that don't support your health, health and wellness, or this positive journey, those people end up leaving, because they're getting something out of a weakness that you have, or an insecurity, or your ill health. Maybe it makes them, feel, it's like a codependent relationship where they're getting something, and out of you being that way. So when you kind of start coming up and out of all of that, the people that are not there for your wellness will just leave you. Like, your energy will zig and their energy will zap, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, that's a common theme that, Cara, we hear quite a bit. In order to be really, I think, effective in the energy healing and a Reiki, part of it is simply being able to manage being an empath,
right?
To some extent,
right? Oh, yeah. And that's one of the reasons why. So when I started my journey in 2014, and I took Reiki 1 at that point, and then I took something called La Ho Chi energy healing. And it really scared me, because I didn't really understand. And my teacher at that point didn't really tell me what to expect. And so I kind of hung it on the shelf for a little while, because I did not know, I didn't really know what was happening to me. And then when I, kind of had this calling to get back into it, probably in 2018, 19, 20, it was hard to find practitioners in my area. And so that's how I found Sufani, just Googling.
Oh.
And and
so you weren't even on Udemy, which is the platform that I teach for everybody.
No, not at first.
On my page, but it all goes to the host, which is Udemy.
Yeah.
And so you just Googled me, and that's how you found me.
That's called good search engine optimization right there. So
yeah. And then when I saw that you were on Udemy, I was like, oh wow, because I had taken classes on Udemy, but nothing in the healing arts at that point. It was mainly I think I took some just how to publish, self-publish, because I wrote some books and I published as well. So the courses I took on Udemy were all about writing and publishing. But then I was like, oh, cool, so I went into Udemy, and it was amazing. So I took Reiki 1, 2, and master level with Sufani, and I've taken so far 12 of your courses.
Okay, so you're on the diploma track?
Yes.
Yeah, and see, that's the interesting thing too, is that even with me starting, I started so long ago in the physical, teaching in live. And there was a period where I needed to take a little bit of a break because life had been kind of crazy, and I just needed a little bit of a break. And then when I ended up moving, my kids were grown, I came here. And it's interesting because you were talking about like a period of time, Cara, where it was quiet for you.
Mm-hmm.
And with healing, with searching and engaging it. And I think that must be true for a lot of healers, that they will periodically have a quiet moment where they're just analyzing, they're in self-discovery, they're living, and they're kind of putting it all into place. Like, what does it all mean? And then the universe kind of brings it back around, and then all of a sudden it opens up a world that you didn't even know. Like maybe you knew one thing, and then it opened up all these other things that you discovered. And it was that way for me too. Then COVID hit, and I moved into a new state, and I was just trying to think, what can I do? How can I start this up in a different way? And, I was just doing a lot of research, and it just popped up, right? It's like that Google, you go in there and you're just trying to get ideas flowing and figure out how can I continue to do this healing in a bigger way? How can I make more impact? And then I ended up finding Udemy, which I had never heard of before. I had never even thought about doing online before, like online teaching. But the more that I looked into Udemy and how easy it was, and it was right up my alley, like I was already doing YouTube videos and I knew how to do all of that, the filming and all of that. And I thought, well, why don't I have so many classes that I used to teach? Why don't I just update them? And one by one, why don't I start teaching and see what happens? And it took, a couple of years. It wasn't easy. And there were many times that, I always call it like sweat equity. It's like blood, sweat, and tears equity, right? And there's so many times that you want to give up. There were times where, it didn't seem to be working, and I wasn't getting the responses that I wanted. And there were moments where I just felt like, what am I doing? Does anyone even want any of this? Because I wasn't getting that action that I have now, right?
Right.
And I always teach in all my classes that you need to have that trusted advisor. Cara, you probably heard me say this in every course, right? Like your trusted advisor is that person who will not whisper sweet nothings in your ear. Okay, so when you are having issues, or you're at your lowest point, or you're making excuses, or you're about to quit, and you want somebody to kind of justify those things, your trusted advisor is the person that won't do that. They're going to be the person that's going to call you on your crap. They're going to tell you like, no, you're not going to give up. And that was what happened with my husband. Because I remember just at one point, just feeling low, feeling just low, like all my efforts weren't paying off. And I felt like, all this hard work, they should have paid off already, and I'm like, I should just, quit. And my husband's like, you're not quitting. He's like, no. I mean, he literally just told me no, no, you're not quitting because you have been working at this so hard. You have to keep going. You've put way too much time and effort in this to just give it up now. You're on to something. So just, stick with it. And, that's why I think that no matter how much success you have at something, because I've seen this not only in myself, but in a lot of people that are very successful, they still doubt themselves. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And right, it doesn't matter how successful you are, you still have doubts because you're the person having to put yourself out there and be vulnerable. You don't know. People are a mystery. Like I just did another class. I'm forgetting the name of the class. it's the success one. Cara, do you remember the name of it? I'm cracking the code of success.
Yes. Okay.
And it's an entrepreneur course, but it goes into detail about that, that people are such a mystery. You know what I mean? Like we're all just trying to figure out what's going to work. What's the magic, right. What's the
Yeah. And it's got to be hard too, because, when I was going through and taking the courses, after some of the modules, you would have a spot where you could rate the course so far and you could put in a review. But I was always so eager to get to the next module that I just never stopped to give the feedback. Oh. And then I'm thinking to myself, so I went back after and I went in when I was done with even previous courses, and I made sure that I put something in, because it's important to get that feedback. You know what I mean? And, I thoroughly enjoy your classes, and it's not easy when you're learning something online. A lot of the courses out there, the information is great, but it's not as engaging, and it's really hard to watch, to really focus when it's the same background every time, or there's charts and graphs and whatever. And so with your classes, they go by really quickly, and it's exciting, and the backgrounds change, and you have really fun, little commercial breaks where you have a coffee mug, the little vampire coffee mug, and the cute music, and it just kind of keeps it going. Yeah. Because even after the course is done, I've even gone back to watch, for example, in the Reiki videos, just watch your hand placements and things like that, and just practice. And it was really helpful. The way you set all of that up, it was almost like actually being there in person. So, I'm very appreciative of that.
That's so awesome. Well, it's interesting. Thank you, by the way, for all of that. And, I do end up getting a lot of people that I'll see, because I do read the reviews because I want to learn from them. Sometimes you get people that are trolling, right. They just didn't stick around. I've seen that statistically, most of the people who leave a bad review, I'll look and see how much they've actually gone into the course, and they may be 6% in, they didn't even, they just judged it and they gave up because it wasn't their cup of tea. And that's why I say it's okay, but what I've seen is that a lot of people like you appreciate the conversational style. And when you were talking about the graphs and the charts and stuff like that, I specifically put in my descriptions, that if you are one who needs graphs and pie charts and stuff like that, I'm probably not the right teacher for you. I teach in the shaman's way, which is through storytelling and sharing. And so sometimes there's that little period of time where people have to understand that, oh, I can have fun. Yeah. And then there's a lot of people too that say, I get this a lot. If you go through my reviews, you'll come on, many of these where they say that I felt like it was sitting with a friend and having coffee or tea. Because I will often have my coffee mug, and I actually had a student that came for services one time here. She was local, and she was so excited because she saw my coffee mug in person. And she was like, oh my God, there's the coffee mug. And then she heard the clock go off, and she's like, oh my God, I love that. That's from the videos, so it's, so I just think that students, the global reach has been amazing through going online. And that's the one thing that I know you guys wanted to talk about, is how going online has really changed things. And it's allowed me to actually have a global audience, and just have this beautiful community that reaches out to me and that talks to me, and so for me, that's like gold for me, because I just, it's all about community to me. I think community is something in our DNA that we need. We need to be with community with like-minded people. We need to share ideas. And so having this community that talks to each other is really an amazing thing for me. That's why I read all the reviews, and I get emails all the time, from people sharing how they were impacted by the courses and what they learned, or even people that have had fears about taking certain courses because it was cultural studies and it was outside their norm. And they were kind of afraid to take certain courses. And so I had to kind of give them a way to like philosophize. Understanding this is cultural studies. You're just learning something. Keep in mind, for everybody who's out there, who's listening, who is in any kind of, this is like non-industry related. It's just anyone who is an entrepreneur or has a dream to start something. You are going to start at zero. And I remember like the first time that I put a course out, I think it was towards the end of the month, and it sat at zero, like for 2 weeks, nothing. The second month I made $14, and every month it just kept going up. And then something happened, I just kept at it, and I kept marketing, and I kept just being my joyful self, and I kept doing stuff. And I did get people in the beginning, even on Udemy reviews, where people were like, oh, she's just telling stories, like people were bad mouthing my style.
Yeah.
And that was probably some of the stuff that made me come back and, feel like giving up sometimes and talking to my husband about things, because it would hurt my soul, it hurt my feelings, that I'm putting myself out there and people are like bashing my life's work, it was hard. So, but then I just realized, you just have to be your authentic self and keep doing what you do.
Right.
And it ended up turning around. So the very thing that initially people were bashing me for completely swung the other way, to where now when you read the reviews, everyone who's leaving reviews is saying they love the conversational style.
Yes.
And that it went from zero to me earning a 6-figure income.
Right.
And it didn't happen overnight, and it's something that you have to work on, and you have to just bake that into the cake.
Right.
And I think, go ahead, Cara. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it's, even when I started my healing journey in 2014, and one of the things that I really enjoyed early on taking your courses was that you talked about the gurus, right? And so I had a guru back in the day, and everything was very rigid and very strict. And so that's kind of how I thought it was, until I took a couple of your courses, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. This is my style. And it really resonated with me. And it's a human experience, especially with like, just the healing journey. It's a very human thing. And therefore, when you take a course in, alternative healing arts, it's so helpful to have those stories and the, just the vivid imagery that you give, when you're telling the stories and all the details. It makes you say, oh yeah, that's happened to me, or, they're just very relatable. So, I truly appreciated that.
Thank you.
And one thing I wanted to ask about also, because people, Sufani and Cara, would normally think, wow, well, Reiki, they think hands sort of on, even talking, the flame coming out of the hand, that it's a personal situation, that, we're talking about energy and having the ability to be close to someone, whether they're being provided with Reiki or whether the training is happening. So this concept of being able to do it with anyone all over the world is kind of interesting. And I don't know, Sufani, if early on there was resistance to that, either in the community, the Reiki community, the industry, or beyond, with this sort of thought. Because my initial thought would be like, well, of course you have to be in person. But clearly that's not the case.
No, it's not. And, the interesting thing about that is that this has been a controversial, it's been controversial from the moment that I actually took my first class, because I remember my teacher talking about how everything had to be in person. Things were not online and all of that stuff back then. And so it was harder to find somebody. And there was this argument, that it you have to receive this in-person training or it's not valid and all of that stuff. And I think we've really evolved, and there's some contradictions in saying that as a Reiki professional, and every once in a while I do still get that from somebody. But it's really an old paradigm, and it's a contradiction in other things that we teach, because we're just talking about Reiki right now, but with Reiki, there's a section in Reiki 2 where you teach distance healing. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what you're doing is you're really focusing like a meditation, and you are choosing someone that you are going to be sending this healing energy to. And I always say in my trainings, and how I learned in person is you let the person know that you're going to be sending it to, and you tell them what time, you're going to do it. And then you just have them sit there, and preferably someone who's not familiar with it, and, who might even be, what is it called when they're not a believer? Skeptic. Right? In the beginning, I would choose people that were super skeptical. Yeah. And I would be like, okay, I want to send this to you. I'm going to do it at this time. And I just want you to pay attention to your body, just be in a quiet space and just pay attention to how you feel. And I would send it. And then I would get the feedback that people had some kind of reaction. So what's really interesting about that is, I say it's, the energy that we're talking about, it's like the energy of a hug, or it's the energy of, sending love or sending a prayer, right? Like we believe that prayers work. We believe that, hugging someone and giving them the energy works, or speaking to people and telling them online, like, I love you and I'm here for you. And people are able to receive that energy, right? They get that energy from you, even though they're not in the same space. And so it's a contradiction to think that in Reiki, you're going to teach that, yes, distance healing works, but then you're going to say, oh, distance attunements don't. And it's like, well, no, they do, because it's the same thing, So every once in a while, I will get somebody who they're not necessarily saying it doesn't work. They're asking for the clarification. I just recently had somebody asking me that. Mm-hmm. And I went into that same explanation, of just this is how you learned it for this. It's the same thing, it's being sent to you, and you are the one taking it in, and at a certain level of understanding, certain for your level what your symbols are. So you can only imagine the symbols of the level you're at, because that's all you're exposed to. Right? When you go to level 3 and you do it again and you say, oh, it's the same attunement that she's providing. Yes, because you're different. It's not about me being different. It's about you're different now, because you've learned more. You now have the master symbols, and those are going to be coming into that attunement when you go through it. So it's it's interesting, and being diverse, and teaching so many things, like, it's just fun, because it's like everything that I could possibly teach to people, anything that I could impart, that was kind of my goal, is to teach every possible thing, and, that I could teach other people, because my mission is to really help people, just be able to reach their own authenticity. Can we unpack, do you mind if we unpack the whole guru thing?
Yeah, I wanted to do that. Yeah.
So let's talk about that, because when you said it, it kind of made me chuckle, because when I was doing soul care sessions here at my home office, I would always establish who's doing what, and not in the sense of a hierarchy, in the sense that the person who came to see me is the one doing the work. Okay, because sometimes people will come to you in healing, especially if you're in like a counselor, or you're doing some kind of talk therapy with people. And I've heard many counselors, kind of have this issue where they feel like they have to heal somebody. They have to make them better. And the correction is no, because, and I would always say, okay, first let's establish that I would always say, I ain't your guru. Okay. I'm not a guru. I'm going to guide you. I'm a guide. It's like a rock climber. You're climbing the rocks. I'm going to point to the right rock for you to latch onto. Your job is to pull yourself up.
Right.
Okay?
Exactly.
Right. So, when I say, talking about the whole guru thing and how you were experiencing that as being very rigid, that's the problem with that, is because what's happening when people have a guru, follower relationship, there's a hierarchy there, right? And then you have to kind of let go of all your authenticity to practice how you want in order to do things by other people's rules. And one of the things that I loved, Osho, who is an Indian mystic, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he had a lecture where he was saying, if somebody gives you a pair of overalls and tells you to wear them, they will always be somebody else's overalls. They will never fit you right. And an example of this that I had, often when I would do live meditation classes, even, as people, I would tell people, invite the leaf blower in. Invite the leaf blower in. They're part of your meditation. Another person would say, well, I was told by someone else that I had to meditate at only in the morning or only in the evening. And the person who would always be telling me this, that schedule would not work for them. And what that was is somebody kind of being a guru in meditation, telling them this is how you have to do it, right? The have to. And I never believed that. I believe that you do it the way that works for you, because, wearing somebody else's overalls is never going to fit you right. That schedule, if someone's telling you can only do it in the morning and you can only do it at night, now you're feeling like you're fighting against something, right? You're trying to force something that's not going to work for your lifestyle. And that's not what it's about. It's about you being able to just get there.
And when you're super ultra focused on being, in that like rigid space, it really does block your energy, from flowing.
When someone is super stressed out about something, and they need an answer to this problem, the answer is not going to come until they find a sense of surrender and peace within themselves. The minute they let go and they surrender, and then they just say, I'm open to the ideas of what comes next. I'm going to let go of my fears about whatever I'm afraid of. I'm going to let go of the stress of whatever this is. The minute that you let go of that, it's a block. Whatever you're seeking comes in naturally. So just like you were saying, if you're sitting there being focused on following someone else's rules and guidelines, you're not focused on the experience you're having and what feels authentic and natural to you. And when you get into healing, this is about your healing. That's why in every course that I do, I tell people, like, don't just listen to me. I'm going to tell you how I do it and how I got there and what I think is, what works. But I don't want you to take my word for it. Like, I want you to, if you need to chop this up and put it into your own stuff, not as is. If you just want to pull one nugget out of what I said and put it into something else you're already doing, do that, because this is about what's good for you. And, if you're trying to build a business or anything like that, especially, you have to get there, and you want to get there authentically. Right. And that's what the course was about. Is like, you can make all these adjustments from your fears, and then you get there, but you get there doing a job that is not what the original dream was, and you hate it.
Right.
One of the elements that is helpful with the online format versus in person is, and Cara can vouch for this, having put out online courses on other topics, but it's about being able to go back at your own pace. And, once that in-person class is over, it's over. So I think there is that ability on the online side, Cara, to have more flexibility. Like you said, you went back to those courses
several times. And those nights where I said, let's listen to the guided meditation. It was Sufani's guided meditation that we were listening to, John.
Okay. So, John, you didn't even know that you listened to my guided meditation.
I've fallen asleep to you, Sufani. So
that's awesome.
A beautiful
that's
thing.
A compliment right there.
Yeah. When I was practicing, John was my person. So
of course he was.
And every time I do something new, it's like, John, I've got this. I need to practice on you. And so I practice on him a lot. And then,
awesome.
So, and then the other thing I wanted to talk about too, because when I started my journey in 2014, the courses that I took, there was never any guidance on like energy protection and boundaries. And so I loved the fact that in your Reiki 1 course, because that's the very first course I took with you, you had something in there that talked about protecting your own energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, the bubble up. And I think that was the biggest issue for me in 2014, because the group that I was in, we were in person. There were probably 15 of us. And I had never taken anything energy work related. And so this was a different form of energy work other than Reiki. And it was very powerful. And I've always had the gift. I've always had this like inner knowing, intuition. I'm an empath. And so during this class, on the people that I was practicing with, I experienced things that left me feeling very heavy and very depressed, I guess you would say. And I don't normally feel that way. And everyone else was all excited and, oh, this is great. And I feel wonderful. And I didn't have that same experience. It really frightened me. And so I was never taught how to like protect my energy. Yeah. And so when I'm teaching others, and I learned from you, that is so important. Even if you're not participating in any kind of healing, even just being out, you know, like at the grocery store or here or there, just being able to protect your energy is huge. And so you offered that class, and that was actually one of the prerequisites for the Reiki Master and Alternative Healer.
Yeah, because I do get people that would go just to the Reiki Master, and then, you know, they say, oh, well, they took it 1 and 2 somewhere else. Can I take this? And I'm like, yeah, because it's on the honesty. Right. You know, it's right. If you didn't take 1 or 2, nothing's going to make sense to you, and you're just cheating yourself. You know what I mean? So most people who get into Reiki are not in it to cheat people. Right. You know what I mean? So I often have people like you who've taken Reiki 1 and 2, and they might just take 3 with me, but then they circle back because there are so many things. Like you said, there are so many different teachers, and they learned a certain way and they teach the way that they learn. But I implemented a lot of things that I felt everyone needed to know. And so I added things that in practice, what came up, and I like all my courses to be very realistic, you know, giving you realistic, like everyday type of information that's important for you to know. And this is also why I created the Energy Protection and Boundaries course. And that one is for free for everybody. So it's not the free course that you're going to give them the link to here. But once they have the link to my website, they can go there and get that course for free too. I do have 2 free courses, but it goes with what you were saying, is that is such a powerful topic. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that so many people were having issues with that, you know, until I put those other courses out. And then I realized, wow, you know, I think I should do a course just on this and the things that people deal with, because I was getting a lot of questions from people taking Reiki. They were messaging me on the platform asking me about protection and taking on people's energies. And that's when I thought, you know, I need to do a course that's just focused on that and give people practical steps that they can take. And also understanding what's your responsibility and what isn't. Because a lot of times, you know, healers will heal to their own detriment. You know, and so one of the things that I teach is that, you know, it's like when you get on an airplane and they tell you, you know, about the mask, you know, if something's going on and that mask comes down, what do they tell you? You know, put it on yourself and then help the other person, right? Yeah. So it's the same thing, you know, but as healers and empaths, you want to just keep healing because you have that ability to help people. And you want to help people, but then you realize that you can help people until you have no energy left. And that's not that's not helpful for you. And it's also not good if you're, you have a family and you have a family or children that need your attention, friends, you have to have a balance of social and all these things. And there's no limit to how many people need healing work, right? So if you just gave yourself to that constantly without these kind of boundaries and also understanding what's your responsibility and what isn't, right? Your responsibility is to provide the information and the guidance. The other person's job and responsibility is to implement it. So if somebody is not implementing the stuff that you went over with them, it's not determining whether or not what you did worked, right? It's not working. Well, try harder. If it's not working, what are you not doing?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like where in some settings, people will, counselors or soul care providers, they will take that on themselves and they'll think, something's wrong with me, right? Like I'm not healing them. And that's why I say with, the whole guru thing, you're not healing them. You are guiding them to their own self-discovery and healing. It's up to them because they are their own authentic person. Only they will know what is the right steps to take, but you're there as a guide to help them with that. And so it works in reverse that, when things are not going right for them, you're not also to blame. Right. Because and that's the boundary that you have to put up. It's okay, like even to say no, right? Or to put boundaries around. One of the reasons why I started doing soul care sessions is because I was literally getting people who were constantly emailing me with issues and problems they had, and they wanted my expertise. Like they wanted to know, what do I do? And it was getting to the point where I was doing this so often that I was constantly doing that, and it was taking away from my family time and other things. And it wasn't that I didn't want to do it. I loved doing the work, but that's when I realized I had to put parameters around it, right? So what was the one way? There's always going to be people that will take for free forever. So I was like, okay, but I need to protect my family time, my time with my husband, my children, my social group, but I have this job that I do, but I also have to protect all those things that make me balanced and whole. And so I'm not going to say no, I'm going to put a boundary and a parameter around it. And that's when I said, I would love to give you like 100% of my attention and time. These are the days and the times that I'm available. This is what I charge.
Yeah.
And that is the topic of an entire online training in itself, because that's something that especially when you're a small business owner, and whether you are a Reiki master or whether you run any small business and you have clients, being able to create those and establish those boundaries for your own sanity and your own energy and your own personal life and your family, that's huge. That's huge. And it's something that, Cara and I, we grapple with that all the time as small business owners. It's very common.
And you will. This is like an ongoing thing. So it's not like you pick this section and then you put up that boundary and then you're like, oh, good, I got the boundary set. Okay. And then you go on to something else. You're constantly going to be, working on balancing all of that out because business changes, responsibility on business change, you grow in business, there's different things. So it's a living, breathing thing that you have to constantly adapt to. And as you're adapting into all these changes, you have to make sure there's still everything that you're doing is in alignment with who you are as a person and how you want to live. So this is another thing too that I learned a long time ago. I don't even remember who it was that I learned this from. It was something that I read, and I'm sure that I've embellished on it since, but it was called the feeling vision, right? So the idea is, say you're a telemarketer and you love talking on the phone. And you wake up every day and you jump out of bed and you're so excited because you're going to talk to people on the phone. But then you fast forward a year, maybe 2 years, you wake up in the morning and you know that you're going to talk to people on the phone and you're filled with dread. Your feeling vision has changed, right? It's no longer in alignment with what you want or who you are. And so what that would be assigned to you is, I need to adapt. What is it? I don't want to talk on the phone anymore. What do I want to do now? And then you think about, well, this is because there's always going to be something else there. And then you say, oh, well, I've been thinking that I wanted to try this. And then you have to ease yourself into constantly adapting to the feeling vision, right? So if something that you have loved all of a sudden does not feel that way for you anymore, that's a time to pause and ask yourself some questions. Okay, how did I used to feel about this? I loved it. What is this feeling that I'm having? It's dread, or I don't want to do it. Okay, why do I have that? Because I've outgrown it, because I don't want to do calls anymore. What do you want to do, right? You see how it starts this whole conversation of you talking to yourself about what's the next step. It's all that self-discovery, and then you just kind of ease yourself into that, right? Yeah. And then as you know, you just take actions, life is going to open up for you.
Yeah. It's sort of like, I retired in June from teaching. So 23 years I taught children. So from grades, probably third grade to sixth grade over 23 years, spent most of my time in sixth grade. And that's what happened. I loved my career, but I've just shifted now. So now I own Balance and Bliss Wellness, and I'm still teaching. I'm just teaching adults. So I'm still doing what I love, just in a different way.
That's what it's all about. You have to be willing to adapt, but you'd be surprised at how many people get locked in. I think people think sometimes that if they change their idea, or they change their business, or something that they wanted, and now all of a sudden, they might feel like, well, I feel embarrassed to tell, my partner or whoever that I want to do this now, or maybe they're going to judge me, or maybe the people that are in my community are going to judge me because I change things. These are normal feelings that people go through, but at the end of the day, you have to arrive as yourself. Like in my shaman class, I don't know if you took Amadeus.
Not yet.
Okay, so one of the stories is that at the end of your life, you're gonna, you say you arrive at the pearly gates, and there's going to be one question that's asked of you, and it is, Cara, why weren't you Cara?
Right.
That's the one question. So because your whole, this whole cosmic thing is about you being you. There is no other like you. There will never be another like you. Mm-hmm. You cannot be anybody else but you can try. You can try and fit into other people's overalls. You can try and do things by other people's rules, but you will never feel that it fits you. It will never feel like you. So we have to pay attention to our emotions, because our emotions are our guidance system. So this is why I said that feeling vision, right? When we had a vision for something and all of a sudden it's starting to, every time we think of it, we get a dread. That is your emotional guidance system telling you there's a little orange cone up ahead for some reason. So instead of just, being like that person who hears clunking in their car and they just turn the radio up, don't be that person. You know what I mean? Like when you hear that clunking, turn the radio off and pay attention. What is it? Where's it coming from? Right? You have to look at yourself, and it's not scary to look at yourself. It's actually more scary to be running around trying to do things that aren't working.
Or being someone out, trying to be someone else,
Yeah, and this unfortunately happens a lot in our society today because we have social media, and it's one of the things that probably causes the most depression is that people are constantly seeing the lives of people online, and they look like they're all having these wonderful, fabulous lives. And maybe if it's business related, or, maybe someone wants a partner and they're seeing somebody else who's always flashing how great their partner is. And they go on trips, or, they have this business that's flourishing, and then they start to compare themselves and where they're at. But you have to realize that, when people are, sobbing and wanting to give up, they're not recording.
Right.
They're not posting that. And that's the reality. Haven't you guys felt that way? Like, tell me you haven't felt like in business that you've wanted to give up, you've wanted to throw things, you've been irritated, right? Like you didn't understand how to fix some technology thing, and you were so frustrated. I mean, you're going to come across all of that, and I would just say, whatever that is, bake it into the cake. Just know it's going to happen, because you're like the CEO, the counselor, the CFO, the marketer. Like you're all of those things, and it can be really difficult. And then you add on to that, comparing yourself to other people.
Right.
It's hard not to do that, because I feel like today with technology, we really have to be careful now, and and I feel like people are starting to do that. You have to put a boundary and a balance to all the social media diet that you're taking in. And that includes news, social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Well, it's called X now, and TikTok, all that stuff. You have to put a time diet on all of that, because all of those thoughts of other people start saturating, and pretty soon it's like 99% of the thoughts are not your own. It's everything you're being fed.
Right.
And you know what I've been loving lately?
What's that?
I've been loving listening to brown noise. Have you heard it?
No. What is that?
Okay. Go on YouTube when you're done and just type in, I like deep brown noise. You'll find it.
Okay.
And the reason why I love this so much is because we don't realize this. We are constantly taking, if we're cooking, aren't we listening to a podcast, or we're listening to Joe Rogan, or we're listening to stories, I'm like horror stories. I'm always listening to horror stories and all these different things. And then I realized, I'm like, I need to I'm going to take a day to not listen to anything, because there was something, I couldn't place what it was, but it's like this feeling.
Yeah.
It's almost like
maybe angst or something,
it's all of that, but it's almost like, just imagine that you're aware that there's a bunch of static in your body, right? And we're always on that. That's our neutral, right? Because we're constantly, say that our brains now are like Times Square, never sleeps.
Right.
It's like we are constantly inundating our brains with stuff, right? Whether it's social media, or whether we're listening to podcasts all the time, or we're listening to basically filling every moment. Right, with noise. Right. And so I took one day, because I started to feel this, and I was like, I think I need a day of just nothing. And so what was really amazing is some of the issues and problems that I had, the answers came, and the feeling of anxiety simmered, and I could hear myself, and ideas started to come back up, because I wasn't constantly looking outside of myself to fill the time with something else.
Right.
Some other people's thoughts, or even if it's just stories. I gave myself a break from that. And that's not to say that technology is an amazing gift as well, right? Because it allows us to reach people, just like you guys with your podcast, me with my teaching and my YouTube channel. It allows me to reach people that I would not normally reach, but we have to put a balance on that, because it's just like that mask, right?
And I think maybe one thing that, Sufani, and before we want to make sure we mention the free course and the specifics on that. We'll have the link to that as well in the post. But to really have people understand that not all the answers come through the mind. And I think we're taught that generally is everything is here, everything is through your mind, and all the answers are there. But the reality is that the best answers are often when there's no mind and you actually truly get quiet. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that maybe this world is starting to, because I would assume that there's many more people interested in Reiki. There's many more people interested in energy work, meditation, than maybe was the case 20 years ago. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's the case, but it seems like it's that way. So I think collectively we're starting to come to a place where people are understanding the value of becoming quiet in spite of all the noise that's around us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the trick is, though, to notice it when it's not, right? Because that's the thing, is that because it's so tempting, because we want to know what's going on, because we want to see our friends, what they're posting and all this stuff, we can cross over into that line where we're not balancing it anymore. And that's the ongoing work that we have to do, because it can be, I always loved how there was a documentary with Garth Brooks. I don't know if you guys listen to him at all. I love Garth Brooks. But in his documentary, he always said, for every blessing, there's a curse. He would always do this. For every blessing, there's a curse. And it's true. And all that is saying is that, for everything that we do, we have to balance it. Right? Marilyn Monroe said, gosh, I love champagne, but if you drank it every day, right, it's you gotta balance, the things that you love and make sure that you're taking time for other things so that you're a whole person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And so that's part of the reason why I named my business Balance and Bliss.
There you go.
Yeah, 100%. So
I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and I'm grateful for you, and I'm just thrilled to be actually having a conversation with you. It's like, I watch you in the teachings and everything, but it's, I consider you one of my mentors, and so it's just really an honor to have you on. And so you are offering to our viewers a free course, and what is that course?
Oh gosh, John, do you have it there? It's Unlock. Tell me what it is. I've got so many.
It is Unlock Your Hidden Power, free shadow work healing masterclass. Uncover the roots of your blocks, shadows, depression, fears, struggles, and inability to move forward.
Yeah, it's for everybody who ever wants it. And the free classes that I offer, they're mini master classes, I call them. They're short. They're usually like an hour and a half or something like that. But they usually come with some kind. Well, not all of them. Some come with a workbook. But in these two in particular, the energy protection boundaries and the one that you just listed, I don't think there are workbooks for those. But they're mini master classes that are open to anybody who wants it.
Sounds good. And boy,
they go by quickly.
Yeah. I mean, you say an hour is short, but an hour is an hour. That's a good amount of content right there.
I know. And I always, when I do these types of like interviews, I'm always like worried that I'm like, oh, are we going to have enough information, to fill the hour? But then, it's silly of me to think that way, because Cara, know more than anybody. When I start talking, I'm like, okay, I got to end this video. It's getting too long, and I'll go into the next one. I don't want to have uploading problems.
and we didn't get into your horror stories, and so we'll have to do that next time.
Yeah, well, maybe you can just post the link for people to kind of explore on their own, because it's not just the horror stuff, but I also do nonfiction healing. So I always say that it's healing and horror, where healing and horror meet. And I also saw this title the other day, and I think I'm going to steal this now, but it was called Healing Horror. And I was like, oh, that's exactly, my horror book always has someone who's healing in it. Right. And it's always got a strong component of someone who's healing, and then family and community are helping them. Yeah. And then I scare the stuff out of you. That's my goal. I want to scare you. But I have a lot of other books too that are nonfiction that are just about healing and healing stories. So thank you so much, you guys, for having me on. This was a blast.
Yeah,
Sufani, it's a great pleasure.
And Cara, it was so great to see you in person. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I know. It's always on. I watch your. We're in the Facebook group too. We want to mention the Facebook group. It's an awesome group, and you just kind of feel like you're at home, and all the like-minded people, and so yeah, it's a real pleasure having you on. It's an honor. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, you guys. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. So Sufani Garza, has been a pleasure, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
All right. Have me back on. We can cover other topics.
Let's do it.
Okay. Thank you, guys.